Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a registered broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Fixed insurance is offered through various independent insurance companies. Cambridge does not offer tax or legal advice.
Welcome to the SA Update. I'm your host, Mike Schuster. Each episode, we dive into meaningful conversations and timely topics designed to empower our communities and clients. From financial insights to real-life confidence, we're here to help you stay informed, inspired, and ready for what's next. Welcome to the SA Update. I'm Mike Schuster, your host, and today I'm joined by Bryce Gill, who's an economist, part of First Trust Economics team. We have partnered with First Trust. Probably I have personally partnered with you at First Trust since my career started back in 2001. And Bryce is responsible for economic indicators, writing economic commentaries, and producing articles for First Trust. And he travels the country and does client events. And we had you here in Nebraska. I think it was in 2001, Bryce. Is that right?
Yeah, 2021. So it was like the height of COVID, basically.
Yeah, 2021.
We still did an event, and
Yeah.
it was great to get out of the office at the time, right? And get in front of people.
And it was such a hit. I wanted to bring you back today because we're going to talk about demographics, because that's one of the things that people don't talk about. They want to talk about interest rates or other things like that. A little bit of background on Bryce. Bryce is based in the First Trust Austin, Texas office, and he received his MBA from the University of Texas McCombs School of Business, and he holds a bachelor's in economics from Miami University of Ohio. Welcome to the podcast, Bryce.
Oh, it's awesome to be with you, man. I really appreciate the invite, and I think we've got a great topic here to unpack for sure.
Yeah, so let's double click into that. Let's talk demographics. And I know this is something that most people don't talk about, but this is a bigger trend. And I think it's an interesting topic because a lot of times we're seeing, okay, why is it hard to hire people? Why is unemployment so low? And so let's start with a definition of the demographic groups that you follow. Can you walk me through like the Gen Z, millennials and such?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm trying to remember who it was. I think it was Harvey Dent. And some people, if you're like really interested in economics or finance, you might have seen like Harvey Dent's channel or come across him at some point. And he was the guy that kind of inspired me to look at generations and kind of their impact on economic activity years ago. And he got like the Dent indicator, but essentially what he was looking at is everybody 25 to 54 years old. Okay. And he said this, hey, this is like this really important demographic. And his argument was essentially these are the people that are doing the biggest amount of spending and biggest amount of life events, right? It's like they're buying houses, they're getting married, they're buying cars, they're buying appliances and sending their kids to college and everything else, right? It's your most productive years as like people aren't economic units, right? But when we look at the economy, we kind of have to think about them that way. It's not only your most productive years, but it's also the years where you're buying the most stuff as well, right? So these are like the core of economic activity in the United States, but really everywhere. And so when you think about that today, and it's not a perfect overlap, but this is like the millennials now are kind of driving everything, right? And so I like to show people, hey, what's been going on with millennials, and really, it's not about the millennials themselves; it's about this core consumer group that is a big driver of economic activity. So, you know, Gen Z is probably just kind of aging into this. Millennials are kind of the core of it, and Gen X and like the baby boomers are starting to kind of be on the tail end of this core consumer demographic.
Yes. So let's double click. Let's talk about that one real quick because I'm a Gen Xer myself, and the Gen Xers are less in population than the boomers and the millennials, correct?
Yeah, exactly. It's one of the smaller generations. So the baby boomers are obviously huge. Gen X was kind of smaller. Then you have the millennials are also huge. And then it's a similar thing with, I think Gen Z as well. They're a little bit smaller demographic generation. And that's just kind of how you see things go. It's just it ebbs and flows a little bit over time. I think today the millennials are about the same amount as the baby boomers. We might even be the largest living generation now. I'm a millennial. So the baton has kind of been passed in a way to the next generation as far as like who's powering the economy.
Yeah. So let's talk about that from the workforce side of it first. What are we seeing from your perspective in the workforce then? What are the trends that are happening?
Yeah, so, I think when we talk about these different generations, there's a couple maybe major things to talk about. All right. So one is the baby boomers. It starts with them that like fertility rates start to fall, right? And that's for a whole host of reasons. The birth control pill gets invented, urbanization, like that's a whole other topic, right? It's fertility rates. But hey, people start having less kids, and they also start living longer. And so, hey, all of a sudden you have like less people coming up behind them than you normally would. And so it creates all these Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid problems in the budget, for example. But, baby boomers also tend to stick around in their jobs longer than ever before, right? They're roughly speaking like kind of hesitant to retire. They want to stay in the game longer. And so for the millennials, I think what you're seeing is just they got sort of like a slower start. Climbing their way up the ladder, right? They had to go to school for a long period of time. It took them longer time to get a degree, to buy a house, and now to take over, some of the management roles in corporate America as well from the baby boomers. So the baton's been passed, but it took longer than in past generations to pass that baton from one generation to the next. Gen X, you guys have always kind of been in there working hard, managing things for the baby boomers from the beginning, but there just weren't enough of you to take over from them fully. And so the millennials are kind of starting to pick up the slack there.
Yeah, so one of my good friends always says this, and I think he's spot on this. The Gen Zers that are coming in right now are coming into maybe one of the greatest opportunity labor markets ever. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And just in general, right? Like the baby boomers, they're living longer. Like I mentioned, they don't want to retire, generally speaking. They like to stay in the game, but you know, uh, at a certain point, you just get too old. You got to drop out, right? And there's all this wealth, all these businesses, all this economic activity that has to be passed from one generation to the next. And so, yes, I mean, there's this huge opportunity for Gen Z to take over a lot of this economic activity, right? The famous one is like all these privately held businesses that exist in the United States, or like the inherited money that's going to be passed down in the financial services industry. We know like this is like trillions of dollars, right? It's the largest amount of money that's going to be passed from one generation to the next, or the largest amount of wealth, right? It's not in just liquid cash. It's obviously in businesses and investments and everything else. And so there's a huge role for Gen Z there. I think also, the reality is the millennials, Gen X, we've had to compete with frankly like the rest of the world because of globalization in like this huge way, right? And now what you're seeing is post-COVID, a total shift in trade policy where we want to reshore supply chains, we want to be more self-sufficient, we want to do more things for ourselves in America. So we want to be less reliant on the rest of the world. Well, that's a giant opportunity for domestic employees in the United States. You add on top of that like this crackdown on illegal immigration. If you're a domestic Gen Z person, you have all this wealth being transferred, and you have a lot less people kind of competing against you. There's a lot of economic opportunity out there. Now, there's also a lot of uncertainty, right? Like AI, all these technology shifts and everything else. But, I do think that Gen Z's, not only are they probably the smartest generation, I think they have a huge opportunity here.
Yeah, so let's talk about the what is called the demographic transition model, and you touched on immigration. So talk about how that relates to this, because I think that's fascinating. And getting ready for our call today, I did some research on that. So talk about that as far as the birth rate and how countries need to basically have children at 2.1 is the number. Is that
Yeah,
right?
it's 2.1 is, 2.1 children per woman is kind of what we're referring to on average across the whole economy is what you need to maintain the population at just like exactly where it's at, right? So less than that, the population over time is going to roll over and shrink. And more than that, right, the population is going to boom. Now you can supplement that obviously with immigration as well. More people can move into the United States. It's not just births that kind of grow a population, but some examples of populations that have rolled over because of low fertility rates, like the classic example is Japan, right? Their population's been in decline since the 1990s. China's population peaked in 2020. It's going to fall by about 40% through the end of the century. South Korea, I've seen different estimates that say like if nothing changes with South Korean fertility rates, which are the lowest in the world today, something like 90% of South Koreans are going to disappear by like the end of the century, right? Just through like natural population decline. So fertility rates have a huge impact here, but in the United States, we have roughly 1.65, I think, is our fertility rate. So it's below that replacement level. It's higher than like Europe or most other places, but it is below replacement. But if you look at our population curve, we grow through the end of the century because of legal immigration, right? Just like those 3 million slots a year getting filled because people want to come here. That means the population continues to grow for the United States for the foreseeable future. So legal immigration is a tailwind for, economic growth, size of GDP, the population, all these things.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that keeps getting lost in the media nowadays. It's such a political hot button. And that's why I think you have to just be able to sit back and have just a conversation around it and look at the numbers, because numbers don't lie. Like you're saying, a 2.1 replacement rate is really important. And we don't have that in the United States currently. Good point on the helping the Gen Zers out with the reshoring and, of course, the nationalization.
Discussions in the show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions. Securities offered through Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a registered broker-dealer, member FINRA SIPC. Fixed insurance is offered through various independent insurance companies. Cambridge does not offer tax or legal advice.